The child. My cheating wife is having isn't mine, so I set the perfect trap. My wife and I have been married for 14 years. We met in college, fell in love quickly, and built what I thought was a solid life together. We have 2 kids, a daughter who is 12 and a son who is 9. I worked hard to provide while my wife stayed home after our first was born. It was a mutual decision and one I never resented. I trusted her completely. That trust started cracking a few months ago when I noticed her mood shifting. She became short with everyone, especially the kids. She snapped over small things and cried randomly. I thought maybe she was stressed, so I tried to be supportive. I asked her multiple times if everything was okay, and she always said she was fine. Then my daughter came to me one evening looking nervous. She told me she had been keeping a secret because her mother made her promise not to tell. She said that for months a man had been coming over on Saturdays when I was at work. Her mother called him her special friend and bribed the kids with toys and treats to keep quiet. My daughter said she knew something was wrong and finally worked up the courage to tell me. I stayed calm for her sake, but inside I was falling apart. That night I could not sleep. The next day I ordered hidden cameras and had them shipped to my office so no one at home would see. I set them up when my wife went out with her friends. Within the first week I had all the evidence I needed. The man was someone I recognized. He was a former colleague of hers, someone she had mentored years ago before she left her job. He was about a decade younger than her. I watched footage of them together in my own living room while my kids were at school. I felt sick. I told my sister everything and showed her the footage. She admitted she had seen my wife at a bar once getting close with a man who was not me, but did not say anything because she was not sure. She felt terrible for not telling me sooner. I told her it was not her fault. Together we came up with a plan. I bought a GPS tracker and hid it in my wife's car. The next time she said she was going out with friends, my sister and her husband followed the signal. She drove 20 miles past her usual spot to meet him at a restaurant. My sister recorded them from the parking lot. He kept rubbing her stomach while they talked. That confirmed what I already suspected. She was pregnant, and it was not mine. We had not been intimate in months because she always had an excuse. I spent the next few days pretending everything was normal while I planned my next move. I told my wife I had a business trip coming up and would be gone for 5 days. She barely hid her excitement. I packed a bag and left the house, but I did not go far. I stayed with my sister and monitored the cameras from her guest room. Sure enough, the first night I was supposedly gone, he came over. He walked into my house like he owned it. He sat on my couch. He ate food from my fridge. He slept in my bed. I recorded everything. On the 3rd night, I decided it was time. I told my sister and her husband to meet me at my house. I also called my wife's parents. I had always gotten along with them, and they deserved to know what their daughter had been doing. I asked them to come over, and they agreed without questions. Everyone arrived within an hour and waited outside. My wife had no idea anyone was coming. I walked up to my own front door with 5 people behind me. I could see through the window that the lights were dim and the TV was on. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. My wife and her affair partner were cuddled together on the couch. She looked up and her face went white when she saw me. Then she saw her parents standing behind me. She jumped up and started stammering. I stayed calm and told her I knew everything. I told her I had footage of every visit he made to our home. I told her I knew she was pregnant and that it was not mine. I told her that her parents were here because they deserved to see who she really was. Her affair partner tried to leave, but my brother-in-law blocked the door. My wife started crying and begging me to let her explain. I told her there was nothing to explain. Her mother started crying too and asked her how she could do this. Her father just stood there looking at her like he did not recognize his own daughter. My wife kept looking around the room searching for someone to defend her, but no one did. Then I told her something that made her stop crying instantly. I told her to sit down because what I was about to say next would change everything. I pulled out my phone and opened the folder with all the evidence. I had 3 weeks of solid proof, but my suspicions started 2 months back when she first started acting strange. I scrolled through the GPS data showing every trip to that restaurant 20 miles away. I showed them the timestamps from the hidden cameras with dates and exact times he entered our house. I pulled up the spreadsheet I made listing every single date he slept in our bed while I was supposedly on business trips or working late. My wife lunged forward trying to grab the phone from my hands, but her father caught her wrist. He told her she had done enough damage and needed to stop making it worse. She pulled back and wrapped her arms around herself. Her mother kept asking how this could happen and how long it had been going on. I told them I had been collecting evidence for 3 weeks, but I suspected something was wrong for at least 2 months before that. The affair partner shifted on the couch and cleared his throat. He stammered that this was between my wife and me, and he should probably leave now. I looked straight at him and told him he was not going anywhere. I said the police were already on their way because I called them before I walked through that door. His face went from red to white in seconds. He asked what I meant about police, and I explained that I was reporting him for trespassing and for participating in a scheme to bribe my children into keeping secrets from their father. I told him that made him part of corrupting minors, and that was something the law took seriously. He tried to stand up, but I told him to sit back down. My brother-in-law moved closer to the couch, and the affair partner dropped back onto the cushions. He kept looking at my wife like she would help him, but she just stared at the floor. The sirens came about 12 minutes later. 2 officers knocked and I opened the door. I showed them my documentation of repeated trespassing with video evidence of this man entering my home without my permission on multiple occasions. I showed them the footage of my children being given toys and treats in exchange for keeping secrets about his visits. I explained that my daughter finally told me because the guilt was eating her up inside. One officer took notes while the other asked the affair partner for his identification. They took statements from everyone in the room, including my wife's parents. The officers told the affair partner he needed to leave immediately and not return to this property. They said if he came back, I could file for a restraining order and he would face arrest. They told my wife this was a civil matter for divorce court, but the situation with bribing the children were concerning. They said they would file a report and someone from family services might follow up. The affair partner practically ran out the door once the officers said he could leave. I heard his car start and the tires squeal as he drove away fast. After the police left, I turned to my wife. I told her she had until morning to pack whatever she needed and get out of this house. Her mother started to say something, but her father put his hand on her arm. He said their daughter made her choices and now she had to face what came next. My wife dropped to her knees and begged me to let her explain everything. She said if I would just listen, she could make me understand why this happened. I told her there was nothing to understand. She betrayed our family and bribed our children into lying for her. Those were facts that needed no explanation. She kept crying and reaching toward me, but I stepped back. Her parents helped her up off the floor. Her mother was crying too, but her father just looked tired and old. They asked if they should take her home with them, but my wife refused. She said this was her house too, and she had every right to stay here. I pulled out my phone again and called my attorney. It was 9 at night, but he answered after 3 rings. I put him on speaker so everyone could hear. He explained calmly that I had already filed separation papers with the court. He said I had requested emergency temporary custody of both children. He told my wife that a hearing was scheduled in 4 days to determine custody arrangements and use of the marital home. My attorney said the evidence of the affair and the concerning behavior with the children would be presented to the judge. My wife's face crumbled as she realized I had been building a legal case for weeks while she thought she was getting away with everything. Her parents took her by the arms and guided her toward the guest room. I heard the door close and then I heard her sobbing through the walls. I did not sleep that night. I sat in the kitchen going through more evidence and making notes for my attorney. The next morning I heard small footsteps on the stairs. Both kids came down looking confused and scared. They asked why their grandparents' car was still in the driveway. I sat them both down at the kitchen table. I explained in the simplest way I could that their mother and I were separating because of grown-up problems that had nothing to do with them. I told them it was not their fault and they did nothing wrong. My daughter started crying immediately. She said she was sorry she did not tell me sooner about the man coming over. She said she knew it was wrong, but Mom kept saying it was okay and giving her new toys. I pulled her close and held her while she cried. I told her she was incredibly brave for finally telling me the truth. I said she saved our family by being honest even when it was hard. My son sat quietly picking at the table edge. He asked if we were still going to be a family. I told him we would always be his family, but Mom and Dad would not live together anymore. I heard movement upstairs and knew my wife was awake. She came down the stairs still wearing yesterday's clothes. She tried to walk over to the kids, but I stood up and blocked her path. I told her that all communication needed to go through our attorneys from now on. She accused me of turning the kids against her. Before I could respond, my daughter spoke up. She said Mom turned them against themselves by making them lie. She said it made her stomach hurt every time she had to keep the secret. The shame on my wife's face was the first real emotion I had seen from her since I walked through the door last night. But it was too little and way too late. My sister showed up around 10 in the morning. I had texted her late last night asking if she could take the kids for the weekend. She agreed immediately. I told the kids to go pack bags for a few days at their aunt's house. My wife protested and said I could not just send the kids away. I reminded her that my sister had been in their lives since they were born. I said right now they needed stability away from this mess we had created. The kids went upstairs and packed without arguing. My son hugged me tight before leaving and whispered that he loved me. My daughter held my hand and asked if I would be okay alone. I told her I would be fine, and they should just focus on having fun with their aunt and uncle. Watching them leave clearly hurt my wife more than anything I could have said to her. Once the car disappeared down the street, my wife finally broke down completely. She collapsed onto the couch where I had found her with him just last night. She told me the affair started 6 months ago when she reconnected with her former colleague on social media. She said she felt invisible and unappreciated. She claimed I was always working and never noticed her anymore. She said he made her feel special and wanted in ways she had not felt in years. I listened without interrupting. When she finished, I told her that feeling neglected did not justify betraying your family. I said it definitely did not excuse getting pregnant with another man's child while still married. I told her she could have talked to me or suggested counseling or done 100 other things before deciding to destroy everything we built together. She looked at me with red eyes and asked if I could try calling him. I pulled out my phone and dialed his number right there in front of her. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again and got the same result. I handed her my phone and told her to try from my number since he was clearly avoiding hers. She took it with shaking hands and dialed. Straight to voicemail again. I watched the reality sink in across her face. She had thrown away 14 years of marriage and 2 kids for a man who turned off his phone the second things got complicated. She handed my phone back and started crying harder than before. I felt nothing watching her break down. The next 3 days passed in a blur of legal meetings and paperwork. My attorney filed emergency custody motions and scheduled a hearing for the following week. My wife stayed in the guest room and barely came out except to use the bathroom. Her parents stopped by once to check on her but left quickly when she refused to talk to them. My sister kept the kids at her house and sent me photos of them playing in her backyard. Seeing them smile even a little bit kept me going through the worst of it. The custody hearing arrived on a Wednesday morning. I wore my best suit and got there 30 minutes early. My attorney met me in the hallway and went over our strategy one more time. My wife showed up 10 minutes before the hearing started with a lawyer I had never seen before. She must have hired him in a panic because he looked unprepared and kept shuffling through papers. We entered the courtroom and sat on opposite sides. The judge was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes. My attorney stood up first and laid out everything. He showed the video footage of the affair partner in our home. He presented the GPS tracking data showing my wife meeting him at restaurants and hotels. He submitted written statements from both kids describing how their mother bribed them with toys and treats to keep secrets. My sister took the stand and described my wife's behavior over the past 6 months. She talked about the mood swings and the lying and the way my wife put her own desires above her children's well-being. My wife's attorney tried to object several times, but the judge overruled him. When it was his turn to speak, he argued that my wife was still a good mother despite her mistakes. He said the affair was a separate issue from her parenting abilities. The judge looked at him like he had 3 heads. She said that bribing children to lie to their father showed extremely poor judgment and a willingness to manipulate them for selfish reasons. She asked my wife's attorney if he had any evidence that contradicted the pattern of deception we had presented. He did not. The judge granted me temporary primary custody right there in the courtroom. My wife got supervised visitation every other weekend pending a full evaluation. My wife started crying and her attorney put his hand on her shoulder. I felt relief wash over me but kept my face neutral. My attorney shook my hand as we left the courtroom. I called my sister from the parking lot and told her the news. She said the kids would be so happy to come home. The following week, I took my daughter to her first therapy appointment. The office was in a building near the mall with a waiting room full of kids' books and toys. The therapist was a woman in her 40s named Dr. Bennett. She had kind eyes and spoke softly. My daughter went in alone for the first session while I waited outside. After 45 minutes, Dr. Bennett called me into her office. My daughter sat in a chair picking at her fingernails. Dr. Bennett told me my daughter was carrying enormous guilt about keeping the secret. She explained that my wife had put our daughter in an impossible position by making her choose between her parents. She said the bribes made it even worse because they taught my daughter that honesty could be bought and sold. I felt rage building in my chest all over again. Dr. Bennett said it would take time, but with consistent therapy, my daughter could work through the guilt and rebuild her sense of security. I thanked her and scheduled weekly appointments for the next 3 months. In the car, my daughter asked if I was mad at her. I pulled over and looked her in the eyes. I told her I was proud of her for being brave enough to tell the truth. I said none of this was her fault, and I would never be mad at her for something her mother did. She hugged me tight and cried into my shoulder. 2 weeks into the divorce proceedings, my attorney called with bad news. Financial discovery had revealed something I never expected. My wife had opened a credit card in my name 2 months ago without my knowledge. She ran up $8,000 in charges before I even knew the account existed. My attorney sent me copies of the statements. I went through them line by line in my kitchen while the kids were at the school. Hotels, rooms I never stayed in, gifts I never bought, restaurant bills from places I had never been. She used my credit to fund her affair while I worked overtime to support our family. I called my attorney back and told him to add financial fraud to the divorce filing. He said it would strengthen our case significantly. I spent the rest of that day canceling the card and filing disputes with the credit bureau. The customer service representatives kept asking if I wanted to file a police report. I said I would think about it. That night I could not sleep thinking about how deep the betrayal went. She did not just cheat on me, she stole from our family to pay for her relationship with another man. Every gift he received and every hotel room they used came out of money that should have gone to our kids' college funds or our mortgage or our savings. I felt sick. 3 days later, my phone rang from a number I did not recognize. I almost sent it to voicemail, but something made me answer. A woman's voice asked if I was me. I said yes. She introduced herself and told me she was the affair partner's wife. My stomach dropped. She said the police had shown up at their house the night of the confrontation and told her husband he was investigated for trespassing. He broke down and admitted everything. She said she had no idea about the affair until that moment. I did not know what to say. She asked if we could meet to share information, and I agreed. We met at a coffee shop the next morning. She was younger than I expected, with 3 kids under the age of 7. She showed me photos on her phone of her husband and my wife together at places I recognized. She had been following him for weeks after the police visit. We compared notes and timelines. My wife had destroyed 2 families, not just one. This woman's 3 young children were now dealing with their parents separating because of choices my wife and her husband made. She started crying and apologized, even though none of it was her fault. I told her I was sorry too. We exchanged evidence and attorney information. She said she was filing for divorce and wanted full custody. I wished her luck and meant it. Driving home, I thought about those 3 kids who never asked for any of this. My wife's selfishness had ripples I never even considered. The next week was relatively quiet until Thursday afternoon. I was at work going through emails when security called my desk. They said my wife was in the lobby demanding to see me. I told them I had a no-contact order from the court and they needed to escort her out. Security said she was refusing to leave. I called my attorney while walking to the lobby. He told me to stay away and let security handle it. I watched from the second-floor window as 2 security guards walked my wife to her car. She was yelling and crying. Other employees stopped to watch. I felt embarrassed and angry. My attorney called back 5 minutes later and said he was filing a contempt motion with the court. He said violating a no-contact order was serious and the judge would not be happy. I asked what that meant for custody. He said it would only help our case. My wife was making everything worse for herself, but I could not bring myself to feel any sympathy. Our kids were the ones really suffering from her choices and her inability to accept consequences. The paternity test results came back on a Tuesday morning. My attorney emailed me the official document. The baby my wife was carrying was not mine. We all knew it already, but seeing it in writing made it real in a different way. My attorney said he would use this to strengthen our case. He explained that the ongoing deception and fraud throughout our marriage showed a pattern of behavior that was relevant to evaluating her fitness as a parent. My wife's attorney tried to argue that the paternity of her unborn child had nothing to do with custody of our existing children. The judge disagreed. She said the pattern of lying and manipulation was absolutely relevant. She ordered a full psychological evaluation for my wife before making any changes to the custody arrangement. My wife would have to complete parenting classes and individual therapy before getting unsupervised visitation. I felt vindicated but also exhausted. Every new piece of information just added to the pile of betrayal. 3 months after the confrontation, we finally reached a settlement agreement. I got primary custody with my wife having every other weekend visitation once she completed all her court-ordered requirements. The house would be sold and proceeds split 50-50, but I got to stay there with the kids until it sold, so they could maintain stability during the school year. My wife had to pay back the $8,000 in credit card fraud over the next 2 years. She also had to cover half of the kids' therapy costs going forward. My attorney said it was a good deal considering everything. My wife's attorney pushed back on the financial terms but eventually agreed. We signed the papers in a conference room with both attorneys present. My wife would not look at me. Her face was pale and she had lost weight. I felt nothing looking at her. This person who I thought I knew for 14 years was a complete stranger. We left through separate exits. I called my sister from my car and told her it was over. She said she was proud of me for protecting the kids. I drove home and sat in the driveway for 10 minutes before going inside. My wife gave birth to a boy in early December. I found out because she tried to send me a photo through text. I deleted it without looking. My daughter asked me a few days later if she had a half-brother now. I told her yes, but explained that her mother's new baby did not change anything about our family. She asked if she would ever meet him. I said that was up to her mother to arrange during visitation time, but I would never force her to have a relationship with a baby from her mother's affair. My son did not ask any questions, but I could tell he was thinking about it. My sister told me the affair partner was not involved with the baby at all. He had completely abandoned my wife once his own marriage fell apart. His ex-wife got full custody of their 3 kids, and he moved to another state. My wife was living with her parents trying to figure out how to raise a newborn alone. Part of me felt she got exactly what she deserved. Another part of me just felt sad that it had to end this way. But mostly I felt relieved that my kids and I were moving forward without her chaos in our daily lives. 6 months after everything fell apart, the real estate agent called to say we had a buyer. The house sold for $20,000 less than I hoped, but I needed to close this chapter. I spent the next 2 weeks packing up 14 years of memories while the kids were at the school. My daughter helped me sort through her room on a Saturday afternoon, deciding what to keep and what to donate. She held up an old stuffed bear her mother gave her for her 8th birthday and asked if she could still keep it. I told her of course she could keep anything that mattered to her. We moved into a 3-bedroom apartment 2 miles from their school on a cold morning in early spring. The place was smaller than the house, but it felt clean and new. My daughter picked the room with the window facing east because she liked morning sunlight. She spent the first weekend decorating with posters and arranging her bookshelf exactly how she wanted it. I caught her smiling while she worked and realized I had not seen her smile much in the past 6 months. My son took the smaller bedroom without complaint. His therapist told me during our last session that he was making real progress in processing his feelings about the divorce. He still had hard days when he got quiet and withdrawn, but those days were getting less frequent. My wife completed all her court-ordered requirements by late spring. The parenting classes, the individual therapy sessions, the supervised visitation reports that showed she was stable and appropriate with the kids. Her attorney filed a motion to upgrade her to unsupervised visits, and the judge agreed. The first overnight visit was scheduled for a Friday in May. My daughter was nervous all week leading up to it. She asked me 3 times if she really had to go. I told her yes, but that she could call me anytime if she needed anything. My son packed his bag without saying much. I dropped them off at my wife's parents' house where she was living with the baby. The baby was almost 6 months old now. My wife stood on the porch holding him and waved as the kids walked up with their overnight bags. I drove away feeling sick to my stomach. They came back Sunday afternoon and both seemed okay but distant. My daughter told me it was weird seeing their mother with a baby brother they barely knew. My son said the baby cried a lot, and their mother seemed tired all the time. They said their grandparents were nice and made them pancakes for breakfast. I did not ask about the baby or their mother beyond making sure they felt safe and cared for. I met someone at work in June. She was new to the company, working in accounting, and we started talking in the break room one afternoon. Her name came up naturally when my sister asked how I was doing during one of our weekly phone calls. My sister said she was glad I was putting myself out there again, but told me to take it slow. I agreed completely. I was not ready to introduce anyone to my children yet. We went on dates when the kids were at their mother's house, coffee shops, dinner at quiet restaurants, a movie once. I told her about my divorce on our 3rd date. She listened without judgment and shared that she had been through something similar 5 years ago. I appreciated that she understood without me having to explain everything. My sister met her once when she stopped by my apartment and we were heading out. Later, my sister texted me that she approved and said I deserved happiness after everything I had been through. I was cautious about trusting anyone again, but I was also starting to realize that what my wife did not have to define the rest of my life. A year after the confrontation, I sat in my apartment on a Tuesday evening watching my kids do their homework at the kitchen table. My daughter was working on a science project about the solar system. My son was practicing multiplication tables. The TV was on low in the background. I had leftovers warming in the oven for dinner. Everything felt normal and quiet and stable. The divorce was finalized 3 months earlier. The custody arrangement was working smoothly with my wife, taking the kids every other weekend and one evening during the week. My children were both still in therapy, but their counselor said they were healing well given everything they had been through. My ex-wife was a peripheral figure in our lives now. She showed up for her visitation times, sent occasional texts about school events or medical appointments, but she was no longer central to our daily existence. I got exactly what I planned for that night when I walked through my door with witnesses behind me. My children were safe, my dignity was intact. We had a fresh start. Life was not perfect, but it was honest now. That honesty was worth everything I had lost to get here.